My name is Celeste Morgan. I'm 35 years old, and today I stood at the very back of my brother's Navy SEAL ceremony in civilian clothes. For 12 years, my family believed I was a failure who dropped out of the academy. They had no idea I was a colonel working covert missions in Air Force Special Operations. Until the day my brother's commanding general looked straight at me during a ceremony and said, "Colonel Morgan." And just like that, every secret I had ever kept came crashing into the light. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from, drop a like, and subscribe to join me if you've ever had to hide your success from people who doubted you. That day, my younger brother, Logan, was the one being honored. He is standing tall in his brand new uniform, soaking up the applause like he was born for it. The whole family's there, mom and dad in the front row, their smiles so big you'd think they'd won the lottery. Military pride runs deep in our blood, generations of it, and today, Logan's carrying that torch. And me? Oh, honey, I'm just there. I'm in my plain Jane civilian outfit. No medals, no rank, nothing to hint at anything special. To everyone around me, I'm just Anna, the older sister who couldn't cut it at the Naval Academy all those years ago. The one who gave up and settled for some boring desk job in Chicago. To my family, I'm the one who let them down, the one they don't talk about when they're bragging at Thanksgiving. But here's the irony. I'm a colonel in the United States Air Force. Special operations, no less. For the last 12 years, I've been jetting across continents, running covert missions that'd make your heart race faster than a rom-com cliffhanger. Counterterrorism, hostage rescues, cyber warfare. I've saved lives, stopped threats, and shaped strategies that'd blow your mind. And I did it all while my family believed I was the family disappointment. As I sat there, scanning the crowd, those sharp-dressed officers, the proud moms snapping pics with their iPhones, the kids waving little American flags, I felt that familiar ache in my chest. Not jealousy, not even bitterness. It was something heavier, like a weight I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to set it down. Loneliness, maybe. Or grief for a truth I'd never been allowed to share with the people I loved most. Then, my eyes landed on him. Colonel James Harper up there on the stage, all stoic and commanding. 3 years ago, we'd worked together on a hush-hush op in Eastern Europe. Her knew me, not just my name, but the real me. The me who'd earned his respect, who he'd once pulled aside to say, "You're one of the best I've ever seen." His words had stuck with me, a rare moment of someone seeing me for who I really was. His gaze swept the crowd, and then, oh Lord, help me, it stopped. Right on me. My heart did a little flip, and not the good kind. I looked away, tried to melt into my seat, praying he wouldn't clock me. But it was too late. I saw that spark in his eyes, that tiny shift in his posture. He knew. He saw me, not just Morgan the disappointment, but Colonel Morgan, the woman who'd been his equal in the field. I wasn't supposed to be seen. Not here. Not like this, and definitely not by someone who could blow my cover wide open. I wasn't ready for what was coming, but I could feel it. Like the first rumble of a storm rolling in. The moment that'd change everything. The beginning of the end of the lie I'd been living for years. So, let me ask you. Have you ever had to hide your shine from the people who doubted you the most? That sting of being invisible to the ones who should have been cheering you on from day one? If you know that pain, then you're already with me. So grab a coffee, settle in, and let me take you back to how it all started. How I became the family's biggest letdown, while secretly becoming one of the military's most trusted operatives. Let me take you back to a time when I wasn't the invisible woman at the family table. Once, I was the daughter who dreamed of serving, the one who woke up early before school to run laps around our neighborhood just to train for the future. I'd pore over Dad's dog-eared naval strategy books, scribbling notes about leadership and sacrifice like they were love letters to my future self. I believed if I worked hard enough, pushed myself to the limit, I'd make my family proud. And for one shining moment, I thought I had. The day that acceptance letter from the Naval Academy arrived, I swear I could have lit up the whole house with my grin. Dad actually hugged me. "Don't waste this," he said, His voice gruff, but his eyes soft. I clung to that moment like it was a lifeline, a promise that I was on the right path. The academy? Oh, it was everything I'd imagined. I aced strategy classes, smoked the physical tests, and earned nods from classmates who didn't hand out respect lightly. I wasn't just keeping up. I was shining. Then came my third year, and everything changed. One afternoon, I was called into a plain little room. No heads up, no clue why. Two guys in suits and a uniformed officer I didn't recognize were waiting. They didn't waste time on small talk. They'd been watching me. My knack for patterns, my cool head under pressure, my drive. They were offering me a spot in a classified Air Force Special Operations program, a world so secret most people didn't even know it existed. It wasn't a choice. Not really. It was a door to something bigger. And I couldn't say no. But there was a catch. Total secrecy. No contact, no explanations, not even to my family. They slid a file across the table. My new identity, my cover story. Celeste Morgan had washed out of the academy, lost her discipline, and let everyone down. It was believable enough to sting. I signed. That night, I called Mom and Dad. I could barely get the words out. Mom's voice turned to ice. "You quit?" she snapped. "After everything your father did to get you in?" "I didn't ask for favors," I mumbled, hating how small I sounded. Dad didn't say a word, just hung up. That silence cut deeper than any lecture ever could. After that, my name became a ghost in the family. At reunions, Dad would brag about Logan, his Navy dreams, his awards, his bright future. Then dodge any questions about me. Thanksgiving turned into a tightrope walk. Logan was always the golden boy. His latest triumph, the talk of the table. Mom would glow, fussing over him like he'd hung the moon. "And you, Morgan?" some aunt would ask, trying to be kind. "Office job in Chicago," I'd say, my voice flat. "Insurance stuff." My cousin Miranda, bless her heart, never let it go. "You must be so bored," she'd say, swirling her wine. "You had such potential and now, paperwork?" I'd smile. "Pays the bills." What I didn't say was that I'd spent the last week in a safe house in Jordan coordinating a sting to stop a weapons shipment, or that I'd memorized escape routes in 3 cities under a fake passport, or that I'd stared down threats that'd make Miranda spill her Pinot Noir. Logan, meanwhile, soared. He'd call to gush about his training, his promotions, his new girlfriend in naval medical. Always ended the same way. "So, how's work?" That awkward pause, like he couldn't picture me doing anything worth asking about. "Busy," I'd say. "Deadlines, you know." He never pressed. I told myself it didn't hurt. My work was bigger than family gossip or holiday cards. Saving lives in the shadows had to mean more than their approval, right? But, oh, it hurt. It hurt when Mom's eyes slid past me at dinner, when I overheard her whisper, "At least Logan's making us proud." It hurt when I got promoted to major after a mission in Somalia and toasted with strangers who didn't know my real name. It hurt when I earned a silver star for an op that didn't exist. No ceremony, no applause. My life split in 2. By day, I was Morgan, the family flop, while Logan's group chat updates lit up my phone. By night, I was Colonel Morgan, briefing on insurgent movements in Syria. Dad, who'd always preached discipline over brains, sent Logan a custom seal knife engraved with strength, honor, legacy. I saw it on Miranda's Facebook. I never told them about the bullet in my shoulder I called a car accident at Christmas, or the shrapnel scar from a botched extraction in Lebanon. I smiled, passed the gravy, and let them sigh about how I never opened up. I wanted to scream. Instead, I went back to work. The mission, the cause, it was enough. It had to be. But the cracks were starting to show. Last Thanksgiving, I'd just flown in from a NATO op that stopped a cyber attack on the East Coast. I hadn't slept in 2 days. I showered, threw on a sweater, and drove to Mom and Dad's. Walked in, and Dad raised his glass. "To Logan," he said, "for carrying our legacy with honor." The room clapped. I stood there, hands shaking from jet lag and adrenaline, feeling like a stranger in my own family. Mom leaned to her sister. At least one of our kids is doing something worthwhile. I slipped into the kitchen to breathe. Miranda followed, wine in hand. We're hiring admins at my company, she said. Might be good for you. I nodded, picturing her face if I told her I'd briefed JSOC 3 days ago. That night, while they toasted Logan's engagement, my secure line buzzed. Emergency extraction, high-risk zone, wheels up now. I left without a word. Logan texted the next day. Kinda bummed you bailed. Again. Mom emailed. Your absence was noticed. Think about your priorities. I read it in a bunk halfway across the world and laughed, bitter and hollow. If only they knew. 12 years of silence. 12 years of being the family ghost. Until that day at Logan's ceremony, when Colonel Harper's eyes saw mine, and the lie I'd built began to unravel. That morning, I slipped into Logan's ceremony the way I always did. Like a shadow. Careful not to leave a trace. I parked blocks away, kept my sunglasses on, and claimed a seat in the back row, close to the exit. Same old playbook. Show up late, stay quiet, disappear before anyone asks too many questions. The Naval Special Warfare Command facility gleamed with pride. Flags hung just so, brass polished to a mirror shine. Families decked out like they'd stepped out of a magazine. I spotted Mom and Dad front and center, of course. Dad in his dress uniform, medals gleaming, every crease razor sharp. Mom, elegant in her navy blue dress, sitting so straight you'd think she was posing for a portrait. They were the picture-perfect military family. I took a deep breath, not for the ceremony, but to steel myself for the familiar ache of being invisible. Again, I kept my head down, hands folded, face blank. No chatting with cousins, no waving at old neighbors, and definitely no catching the eye of anyone in uniform who might know the truth. I was just Morgan, the sister who faded into the background. Then he stepped onto the stage. General Marcus Briggs. At first, I didn't clock him. My eyes were on Logan, standing ramrod straight in formation, the pride of the family shining like a spotlight. But when Briggs took the podium, his face hit me like a jolt. My heart skipped, and not in a cute way. I knew him, and he knew me. 3 years back, we'd worked together on the Antalya Op, an intelligence grab under enemy noses. 6 weeks embedded, no contact, pure focus. The intel we pulled out rewrote the playbook for counterintelligence in the region. Briggs had called my work tactical brilliance. Now he was standing 15 feet away and scanning the crowd. I shrank into my seat, angling my body, avoiding his line of sight. Training kicked in. Minimize profile, break eye contact, blend. But Briggs wasn't just anyone. He was trained. His gaze snagged on me and I saw it. The spark of recognition, then the certainty. He smiled. It was subtle, a flicker most wouldn't catch. But to me, it was a neon sign. I mouthed no, pleading with my eyes. His head tilted, like he was a puzzle he couldn't resist solving. Please don't. Then he leaned into the mic. Before we honor today's graduates, I want to acknowledge someone here who's served with extraordinary courage, though not in these halls. My chest seized. Colonel Celeste Morgan. The world stopped. Heads turned, a slow-motion wave of confusion. Colonel Celeste Morgan, he said again, his voice warm, his eyes locked on mine. Over a decade in Air Force Special Operations, leading classified missions worldwide, many supporting our work here at Naval Special Warfare. The air vanished. Whispers erupted, my name spreading like wildfire. Colonel, Mom's voice cracked, loud enough for the row behind her to hear. Dad shot to his feet, his face a mix of shock and something sharper. Betrayal, maybe. Logan, still at attention, broke form, his eyes darting to me. It hit them all at once. The name, the rank, me. There's a mistake, Dad said, his voice low, commanding like he could order the truth to bend. But there wasn't. Commander Ethan Carver, another ghost from my past at Syria 2019, stepped forward from the stage's edge. He grabbed my hand, shaking it firmly. "Colonel Morgan," he said, voice carrying. "Your work on the Mogadishu intercept rewrote our deep cover protocols. They're standard across 3 divisions now." I heard gasps. A phone clattered to the floor. I stood frozen, the weight of every eye in the room pinning me in place. My carefully built lie, 12 years of silence, of playing the family failure, was crumbling, and I couldn't stop it. The room felt like it was holding its breath. My mother's eyes were wide, her face a mix of shock and something softer, maybe regret. Dad stood like a statue, his jaw so tight I could see the muscle twitch, his Navy pride wrestling with the bombshell that had just upended his world. And Logan. Poor Logan looked like he'd been hit by a truck, his mouth still half open, his perfect posture crumbling as he tried to make sense of me. His big sister, the one he thought he'd lapped years ago. Celeste. He stammered, stepping forward, then stopping like he wasn't sure he had the right. Are they talking about you?" I opened my mouth, but the words stuck, trapped behind a decade of secrets. Before I could find my voice, General Briggs turned to my parents, his tone steady, respectful, but unyielding. "Captain Franklin Morgan, Mrs. Morgan," he said, nodding. "Your daughter is one of our finest intelligence officers. Her work has saved countless lives, including, indirectly, many in the SEAL teams your son now serves with." The silence that followed was deafening, louder than any explosion I'd ever heard, any alarm blaring in a hot zone. It was the sound of 12 years of lies cracking open, exposing the truth I'd buried so deep even I'd forgotten how heavy it was. I stood there, rooted to the spot. Not a colonel, not a covert operative, just Celeste, the daughter, the sister, the one they'd written off. And now, there was nowhere left to hide. Mom's lips trembled, her hands clutching her seat like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Dad's face had gone pale, his military precision failing him for once. Logan took a shaky breath, his eyes searching mine like he was seeing me for the first time. "Is it true?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "You're a colonel?" I nodded, my voice low but clear. "Yes." It was the first time I'd said it out loud to them. The weight of it hung in the air. "I was recruited out of the academy for a classified program," I said. "The dropout story was a cover. I couldn't tell anyone. Not even you." Mom blinked, tears threatening to spill. "You've been lying to us? All these years?" "Not lying," I said, meeting her gaze. "Following orders, the kind that keep people safe." Dad stepped forward, hands clasped behind his back, his voice clipped like he was addressing a subordinate. "What division?" "Air Force Special Operations Command. Intelligence." His brow furrowed, and I saw the flicker of disdain. "You joined the Air Force?" I almost laughed, but it came out as a sigh. "It wasn't about the branch, Dad. The program was housed there. It was about the mission." He turned to Briggs, grasping for something solid in the chaos. "You're saying my daughter, who walked away from the academy, is a colonel in special ops. And you've known this?" Briggs nodded, calm as ever. "I've served with Colonel Morgan on 3 joint operations. She's one of the sharpest minds I've worked with. Her leadership has shaped missions that regrettably must stay classified." Dad's face stayed blank, but I saw it. A crack in his armor, a flicker of something like guilt. "This can't be real," Mom whispered, her voice breaking. "It is," I said softly, "and I never wanted you to find out like this." The crowd was buzzing now. Some were filming, others just gawking, unsure if this was a family drama or a military tribute. My cousin Miranda pushed through the aisle, her eyes wide like I'd just confessed to a crime. "You're a colonel?" she hissed, like I'd tricked her personally. I looked at her steady. "Remember when you offered me that admin job? I'd just come from briefing the Joint Chiefs." Her jaw dropped, then snapped shut, speechless for once. Logan stepped closer, his confusion raw, almost childlike. "You were at my engagement party," he said. "You left early." "Eastern Europe," I said quietly. An extraction op was going south. If I'd stayed, people wouldn't have made it out. He nodded, piecing it together. "That scar on your shoulder. Christmas, you said it was a car accident." "Lebanon," I admitted. "RPG hit our convoy during a hostage rescue." He looked down, hands trembling. "I've been bragging about my training to you, and you were doing that?" "You earned your place," I said. "Your path's yours. Mine's just different." The ceremony stumbled on behind us, officers trying to steer things back to normal, but the air had changed. The truth was out. I was Colonel Celeste Morgan, and the mask I'd worn for years was gone. A group of officers had gathered nearby, watching, some nodding my way like they'd always known. Dad stood rigid, his mind clearly racing, the Navy vet in him dissecting every word, the father in him still lost. Mom's knuckles were white, her purse a lifeline as she teetered between shock and heartbreak. "I don't understand," she said, tears spilling over. "You let us think you failed. For 12 years. "It wasn't my choice," I said. "The cover was mandatory. It kept you safe. That's how it works." Dad's voice cut through, sharp. "You could have said no. You could have told us something." I let out a tired laugh. "You think I didn't want to? You think it didn't gut me to sit through every dinner hearing about Logan's future while you acted like I had none?" His jaw twitched, the truth hitting harder than he'd expected. "You asked me when I'd get serious while I was limping from a recon injury," I said. "I was leading teams across borders we weren't supposed to be near." Silence fell, heavy and raw. "You said discipline beat talent," I added. "You were wrong. I had both." For the first time in years, I saw Dad falter, his eyes flickering with something I couldn't name. Logan broke the quiet, his voice cracking. "So, what now?" "Nothing changes," I said. "My work stays classified. I keep going. But now, you know." "You missed my engagement party," he said, softer. "I thought you didn't care." "I care more than you'll ever know," I said. "But people were counting on me to get them home." He nodded, the pieces starting to fit. Mom's voice trembled through her tears. "We said awful things. About you. To you." "I know," I said. "And I took it. Because I had to. The mission came first." "How do we come back from this?" she whispered. I looked at her, my heart aching. "You start by seeing me as your daughter again. You stopped a long time ago." The words landed like a punch. No one spoke. Then Briggs stepped forward, his presence pulling the room back to attention. "If I may," he said, his voice steady but firm. "Colonel Morgan's record isn't just impressive, it's exceptional. One of the youngest colonels in her field, she's shifted the course of conflicts, all without recognition, without family support." He looked at Dad. "Captain Morgan, with respect, your daughter has earned more than a seat here. She's earned your pride." Then he saluted me. Crisp, deliberate, officer to officer. The room shifted. Other officers followed, one by one, their salutes quiet but powerful. I watched as the man who'd once called me unfit stood frozen while his peers honored me in a way he never had. I didn't cry, but my hands shook. Logan stepped forward, his eyes meeting mine. Not as my little brother, but as a soldier seeing another. He raised his hand in a salute. "Colonel Morgan?" he said, voice steady. I returned it. "Lieutenant Morgan." For a moment, we held that salute, no longer just siblings, but comrades bound by something deeper than family. The room faded, and it was just us. Two soldiers, two paths, finally meeting in the light. The ceremony eventually resumed, but the air had shifted like the quiet after a summer storm. The applause for Logan's formal recognition carried a different weight. Not because his moment meant less, but because another truth had stolen the room's breath. My truth. It didn't fit neatly into the program or the glossy pamphlets, but it was there, raw and undeniable. Celeste stood in the back as the remaining honorees were called. I didn't speak again. I didn't need to. My family sat like statues, upright, composed, but no longer sure of the roles they'd been playing for years. When the final anthem played and the officers were dismissed, the crowd began to scatter. Families reunited, snapping photos, handing out flowers, their laughter and hugs filling the space. And then there was us. The Morgan family stood in a loose huddle near the platform's edge, wrapped in silence. For a moment, no one moved. Then my mom reached for my hand. It wasn't the big, movie-style, tearful embrace you might picture. Girlfriends. No, it was small. Simple, but deliberate. Her eyes still held 1,000 questions, but for the first time in years, I didn't see judgment. Just a flicker of understanding. "We're having dinner," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Just family. Near the base. Nothing fancy." I nodded, my throat tight. "I'd like that." As we walked out of the hall together, heads still turned. Not with confusion anymore, but with curiosity, recognition, maybe even a little respect. My dad walked beside me, silent for now. His face was unreadable, but I could feel the weight of his thoughts. Logan stayed close, glancing my way every few steps, like he was still wrapping his head around who I was. But when we hit the parking lot, he flashed a quick smile. Just a flicker, but it was real, like the brother I'd missed was peeking through. That evening, over steak and mashed potatoes at a cozy little restaurant near the base, we sat around one table again. Not as the golden son and the daughter we don't mention, but as a family facing the silence we'd built between us. Dad didn't talk much, but when the waiter poured his wine, he looked across at me and asked, "What's next?" It wasn't just about my career. It was him opening a door, asking to hear me, really hear me for the first time. And I walked through it. That dinner didn't magically fix everything, ladies. There were still scars, still words we hadn't said, still years of hurt that wouldn't heal in one night. But for the first time in 12 years, I wasn't hiding. And they weren't pretending. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. So tell me, have you ever been misjudged by the ones who were supposed to know you best? Have you ever had to hide your shine to protect someone, or even yourself? Drop your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. And if this resonated with you, give this video a like, share it with your friends, and hit subscribe for more true stories about hidden strength, redemption, and the power of finally being seen. The sun was sinking low, painting the sky in soft pinks and oranges as I pulled into the lot of the restaurant Mom had picked. It was a cozy little spot, hidden behind a row of old oak trees just off the main road. Not too fancy, but not a dive either. The kind of place where families gather to celebrate milestones or mend fences, where the past doesn't get to sting quite as much. I stepped out of the car, the gravel crunching under my boots, and took a deep breath. This wasn't a mission, but it felt like one. Inside, they were already seated at a round table by the window. Mom's choice, no doubt. She always had a thing for windows, once telling me they're for people who want to be seen but don't always want to talk. Tonight, she faced the glass, her reflection faint in the dimming light. Dad sat beside her, shoulders squared like he was still on duty, even years into retirement. Logan, out of his crisp uniform and in a dark sweater and jeans, looked younger somehow. Like the kid who'd chased me around the backyard, not the seal honored hours ago. And there it was. An empty chair. Mine. I paused just for a heartbeat, then walked over. Their heads lifted as I approached. Mom's smile came first, small, hesitant, but there. Dad gave a curt nod, his face unreadable but softer than I expected. Logan stood, pulling out my chair with a grin that felt like a lifeline. "Hey, Celeste," he said softly. "Glad you made it." I nodded, settling in. Wouldn't miss it. For a moment, no one spoke. The server swooped in, breaking the tension with drink orders. Mom got her usual wine, Dad stuck with water, Logan went for a beer. When the server turned to me, I hesitated, then said, "Merlot, please." Mom's eyebrows flicked up, a tiny spark of recognition. "You still drink Merlot?" she noted, her voice quiet but warm. I smiled. Some things don't change. The silence that followed wasn't sharp or cold, just careful, like we were all testing the ground beneath us. Menus arrived, giving our hands something to do, but I doubt any of us actually read them. We were too busy navigating the weight of the moment. Dad broke the quiet first, his voice low, deliberate. "What you did, Celeste, it's beyond anything I could have pictured." I looked up, surprised to find his eyes on me, not his menu. "I don't know how you kept that career under wraps for 12 years, he said, "but I respect it." No apology, not his style, but I heard it in the way his fingers fidgeted with his napkin, in the way he didn't look away. It was close enough. "Thank you," I said, keeping it simple. Mom folded her menu, setting it down with purpose. "I kept your academy letter," she said, almost too casually. I blinked. "You did?" She reached into her purse and pulled out a creased envelope, its edges worn from time. I recognized it instantly, the letter that had once felt like my whole future. "I'd read it sometimes," she said, her voice catching. "When I missed you. When you didn't come home for holidays. I was overseas," I said softly. "I know that now," she whispered. "Back then, I thought you were just pulling away." "I was," I admitted. "Not because I didn't love you. It just hurt too much to keep pretending." Her face softened, and for the first time in years, I saw her see me. "I get that," she murmured. "I really do." The waiter came back and we ordered. Something safe, forgettable. The kind of food you pick when your heart's doing all the heavy lifting. When he left, it was just us again. 4 people who'd shared a home but somehow become strangers, now trying to find their way back. Mom sipped her wine, then looked at me. "Do you remember your first day at the academy?" "Like it was yesterday," I said. "You dropped me off at the gates, didn't even park." She nodded, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Your father said it'd be easier. No lingering." I glanced at Dad. He didn't argue. "I cried the whole drive home," she said. I froze. "You did?" "You didn't seem like it," I whispered. "I didn't want you to think I doubted you." A bitter little smile crept onto my face. "But later, you did?" She looked down, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. "Yes, I did. That honesty, raw and unpolished, hit me harder than I expected." "I thought you'd thrown it all away," she said. "Everything we'd given you." "I thought I was protecting you," I said. "The mission demanded more than secrecy. It needed distance. If the people I loved didn't know, they couldn't be leverage." Logan leaned forward, his voice low. "That's terrifying." "It was," I said, "and lonely. But it was the only way I knew to serve." He sat back, arms crossed, his eyes searching mine. "I used to resent you, you know? Every time Mom said your name like it was a curse. Every time Dad dodged it. I hated not knowing the whole story." "I hated it too," I said. "But some truths only work when the danger's past." He nodded, slow and thoughtful. "I believe you, and I'm sorry." My throat tightened. I hadn't heard those words from Logan since we were kids, fighting over who broke the remote. I didn't cry, but something inside me loosened, like a knot finally coming undone. Dad cleared his throat, his voice gruff but steady. "When I joined the Navy, my father told me I'd come back a man or not at all. I think I carried that with me, without meaning to. I judged you by what I could see. Rank, medals, the things I understood." He met my eyes unflinching. "But you were doing something braver than I ever imagined. And I owe you more than this dinner. The room seemed to still, even the clink of glasses fading away. I forgive you, I said quietly. He blinked, caught off guard. You don't need to. I do, I said. Not for you. For me. Because forgiveness wasn't about erasing the hurt, it was about making room for something else. The food arrived, steaming plates and warm bread grounding us in the moment. For the first time in years, we ate together without the weight of pretense. By dessert, Mom was laughing softly at a story Logan told, a camping trip where a raccoon stole his marshmallows. For a fleeting moment, it felt like we'd rewound time, back to when we were just a family, not a puzzle of secrets and regrets. But it wasn't the same. It was better. Because this time, we were real. Dad sipped his coffee, then looked at me. I used to think respect came from what you could see. Promotions, ceremonies, the stuff everyone claps for. And now? I asked, holding his gaze. Now I know the quiet kind. The invisible kind is tougher, braver. I never saw that in you before. I swallowed hard. Thank you, Dad. That means more than you know. He hesitated, then added, I didn't say it earlier, but I'm proud of you, Celeste. The words landed like a warm blanket, wrapping around a part of me that had been cold for too long. I'd carried the silence, the judgment, the ache of being unseen for so long, and now, with one sentence, something shifted. I'm proud of you too, I said, for showing up tonight, for trying. He gave a faint smile, nodding like he needed the motion to hold himself together. When the check came, we all reached for it. Old habits die hard. Logan got there first, grinning. My treat, he said. You've all carried enough tonight. We laughed, not because it was hilarious, but because it felt safe to laugh again. Outside, the night air was crisp, the streetlights casting a soft glow. We lingered on the sidewalk, unsure how to end a night that had rewritten so much. Mom stepped forward first, pulling me into a hug. Not tentative, not stiff, but full, like she was trying to hold all the years we'd lost. You'll come for Thanksgiving? She whispered. If I'm not deployed, I said. I'll be there. She smiled against my shoulder. We'll save you a seat. Dad shook my hand, firm and steady, then pulled me into a hug. No words, just the weight of his arms saying what he couldn't. Logan was last, clapping a hand on my shoulder. Ever think about training the next generation? He asked, a teasing glint in his eye. I raised an eyebrow. You want me to be a drill instructor? Just saying. He grinned. You're the only person I know who could make a 4-star general snap to attention. I laughed, the sound lighter than I'd felt in years. I'll think about it. He pulled me into a quick, warm hug. Don't stay gone so long, okay? I won't, I said. No more hiding. We stood there a moment longer under the glow of the streetlights before heading to our cars. I watched them drive off. Mom and Dad's sedan easing down the road, Logan's truck trailing behind. For the first time in forever, I was alone, but it didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like space, like peace, like the start of something new. 2 weeks later, a cream-colored envelope arrived at my apartment, its embossed Air Force Special Operations Command seal catching the light. Inside was a single card, heavy with meaning. Colonel Celeste Morgan is hereby invited to attend the annual Distinguished Service Recognition Ceremony, where she will be honored for her 12 years of classified operations in service of the United States of America. At the bottom, a handwritten note from General Keller. It's about time the world sees what we've always known. I stared at it, my coffee growing cold on the counter. I'd been to ceremonies like this before. Always in the shadows, behind secure doors with audiences bound by NDAs. But this was public. I was the guest of honor. I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or book a one-way ticket to nowhere. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called Mom. Hi, sweetheart, she answered, her voice warm but surprised. There's an event in D.C. next Friday, I said, my words careful. A formal military ceremony. They're honoring me. A pause, then her voice softened. Should we be there? I swallowed the lump in my throat. Yes, I'd like that. Another beat. We'll be there, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. The day came fast. I stood before my mirror, my dress blues crisp, silver trim gleaming, medals pinned openly for the first time. My hair was pulled back, neat and precise. But as I looked at my reflection, I didn't see the soldier who'd spent years hiding. I saw Celeste, whole, unapologetic, stepping into her story. The venue was stunning, an old federal hall transformed into a ceremonial chamber, its walls lined with flags, its air humming with anticipation. Dignitaries, generals, and reporters filled the space, their murmurs blending with the clink of glasses. And in the third row, my family. Mom wore navy, a quiet nod to my uniform, her hand gripping Dad's tightly. Logan, in his own dress uniform, caught my eye and gave a small nod, his face a mix of pride and awe. Dad sat straight, his expression unreadable but his presence steady. I'd never felt so exposed. But for the first time, I didn't feel alone. The announcer took the podium, his voice cutting through the hum. Today, we honor a soldier whose service has, until now, lived in the shadows of national security. Her name is Colonel Celeste Morgan. To many of you, she was simply missing. The room turned as I walked to the stage, each step pulling my past along with me. Every late-night mission, every silent sacrifice, every tear shed in secret, wondering if this moment would ever come. And now, it was here. I reached the podium and looked out. Faces of those I'd saved, officers I'd trained, friends I'd lost to missions that never made the news. And my family, their eyes wide, hearts open, watching me with something new. Pride. Good evening, I began, my voice steady, stronger than I'd expected. 12 years ago, I left home under a cloud of misunderstanding and silence. I told no one where I went. I told no one who I became. I paused, letting the room breathe with me. Some of you know what that costs. To serve in places without names, to succeed in missions that won't be written about, to fail in silence, to grieve in secrecy. The crowd was still, hanging on every word. I never expected recognition. I thought my work would end in whispers, not applause. But standing here, I realize this moment isn't just about the past. It's about claiming who you are, out loud, without fear. I looked to the third row. Mom's tears fell silently. Dad's jaw was tight, his eyes locked on me. Logan's were glassy, but he nodded, a soldier recognizing another. I dedicate this to the families who wait, not knowing, to the women who walk into rooms uninvited and take command anyway, to the soldiers who shine in darkness because they were told they couldn't stand in the light. One last breath. I'm done hiding, and I hope you are too. The applause hit like a wave, not polite, not restrained, but thunderous. General Keller stood first, then the front row, then the entire room. Hundreds of people on their feet, hands clapping, eyes on me. Not for the medals on my chest, but for the story I'd finally told. Later, outside the venue, a reporter caught me, her mic ready. Colonel Morgan, how does it feel to finally be seen? I smiled, the night air cool against my skin. It feels like coming home. The next week, my face was everywhere. Military magazines, evening news, veteran blogs. My essay, The Cost of Silence, went viral, shared by soldiers and civilians alike. Invitations poured in. Leadership summits, mentorship programs for female officers, consults on special ops reforms. My inbox overflowed, not with orders but with gratitude, messages from people who'd once dismissed me, now seeking my voice. Even the Naval Academy, where I'd once been marked absent, invited me to give the keynote at next year's graduation. I said yes, not for the stage, but because I'd earned it. Not with medals or missions, but with the quiet conviction that my story mattered. A week later, I stood on that very stage, facing hundreds of cadets, some barely 20, others older, all wondering what it meant to serve in a world that doesn't always say thank you. I told them the truth. Bravery isn't always loud. Honor isn't always recognized on time. Sometimes the greatest victories are the ones you fight inside yourself, when no one's watching and the only applause is your own heartbeat. They stood when I finished, and I stood with them, no longer the girl who sat in the back row, unseen. That night in my DC hotel, I stepped onto the balcony. The city's lights glowed below, steady and familiar, like they were whispering, "We see you." I sat in the quiet, no uniform, no cameras, just Celeste. For years, I'd thought I had to choose my truth or my family, silence or love, service or self. Now I knew I never had to. I just had to wait for the right moment, the right chapter. And it was here. You see the uniform, the medals, the title. Colonel Celeste Morgan, and you think you know the story. The shine of the rank, the weight of the honors. They look like triumph. But they don't tell you about the nights that haunt you. The ones that creep into your dreams at 2 a.m., leaving you gasping, reaching for a weapon that's no longer there. They don't tell you about 2017. About the mission that nearly ended me. About what I had to leave behind. And what I had to become. To survive. I've never told this story. Not to my family, not to General Keller, not even to the therapist who tried to help when my hands wouldn't stop shaking. For years, I buried it, locked it away in a corner of my soul I didn't dare touch. But after Logan's ceremony, after the truth broke free and I finally felt seen, something shifted. I'm ready now. Not to go back to that place. Not physically, because I'll never step foot there again. But emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Because a piece of me is still trapped in that night. And if I don't let it out now, I might never. So come with me. Let me take you to the night it all went wrong. It was 2017, a sweltering night in a country I still can't name. The mission was supposed to be clean. Extract 3 agents, secure 2 hostages, neutralize 1 high-value target, and be gone by 0300. My team was tight. 4 of us, hand-picked for precision. I was the lead call sign sparrow, running point from a makeshift command post in a crumbling safe house. We had eyes on the target's compound, a dusty sprawl of concrete and barbed wire, lit only by flickering generators. The plan was simple. Infill under cover of darkness, grab our people, take out the target, and slip out before anyone knew we were there. But plans like that? They're only simple on paper. We moved at midnight. The air was thick, heavy with heat and the tang of diesel. My second-in-command, Lieutenant Reza, codename Hawk, was leading the ground team. She was sharp, fearless, the kind of soldier who could read a room faster than most people read a book. We'd worked together for years, trusted each other with our lives. The other 2, codenames Ghost and Raven, were newer but solid, trained for the chaos of covert ops. The hostages were aid workers, caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, and the target was a facilitator, someone funneling weapons to groups we couldn't let grow stronger. The first hour went like clockwork. Reza's team breached the perimeter, silent as shadows. I monitored from the safe house, my headset crackling with their updates. "In position," Reza whispered. "Eyes on hostages." My screen showed their heat signatures, faint but steady. The target was in a second building, unaware. We were close, so close to pulling it off. Then it unraveled. A patrol we hadn't accounted for, new intel, bad intel, stumbled across Ghost's position. A single shout, and the night exploded. Gunfire lit up the compound like a storm. Reza's voice came through, calm but urgent. "Contact." East side. I barked orders, rerouting Raven to cover, but the math was turning against us. The target's guards were waking up and our window was shrinking. "Get the hostages out," I said. "Now." Reza didn't hesitate. She and Ghost pushed forward, cutting through the chaos to reach the holding cell. They had the aid workers, 2 women, terrified but alive. I could hear their ragged breathing through the comms, but the target was on the move, slipping toward an escape route we hadn't mapped. If he got out, the whole op was blown. Months of work, lives on the line, all for nothing. I made the call. Hawk, take the shot if you have it. I don't, Reza said, her voice tight. He's behind cover, moving fast. Then I'm coming in, I said, grabbing my gear. No, Morgan, she snapped. You stay put. We need you on comms. But I was already moving. I couldn't let him slip away. Not after everything we'd risked. I left the safe house, sprinting through the dark, my rifle heavy in my hands. The compound was a maze of dust and noise, bullets pinging off walls, shouts in a language I only half understood. I found Reza's position, saw the target's shadow darting toward a vehicle. I raised my weapon, lined up the shot. And then the world turned white. An RPG, fired from somewhere in the chaos, hit the wall beside me. The blast threw me to the ground, my ears ringing, my shoulder screaming where shrapnel had torn through. I scrambled to my knees, blood hot on my skin, and saw Reza dragging one of the hostages to cover. Ghost was down, his leg a mess. Raven was still firing, holding the line. Fall back, I shouted, my voice hoarse. Get to the exfil. But Reza shook her head. Not without you, Sparrow. I crawled to Ghost, pulling him behind a crumbling wall. The target was gone, escaped in the chaos. The hostages were shaking, one sobbing, the other silent, her eyes wide with shock. We were pinned, outnumbered, and running out of time. Exfil's compromised, Raven said, his voice grim. They've got vehicles on the road. I looked at Reza, her face streaked with dirt and blood. She nodded, understanding what I didn't want to say. We had to move now, or none of us were getting out. The next hour was a blur of survival. We dragged the hostages through a drainage ditch, dodging gunfire, using every trick we knew to stay alive. My shoulder burned, my vision blurring, but I kept moving, kept calling the shots. Reza took a bullet to her armor, but she didn't flinch. Ghost limped, leaning on Raven. We made it to a secondary exfil point, a chopper waiting just beyond a ridge. As we piled in, the hostages clinging to us, I looked back at the compound, flames licking the sky. We'd failed. The target got away. But we'd saved the hostages. And we'd all made it out. Barely. Back at base, the debrief was brutal. The target's escape meant months of work undone, a network still active. I took the heat, as the lead. My shoulder needed surgery, but I refused to let it ground me. Reza and I didn't talk about it. Not the fear, not the close calls, not the way we'd looked at each other when we thought it was over. Ghost recovered, eventually. Raven got a commendation for holding the line. The hostages went home, their names never making the news. But me? I carried that night like a stone in my chest. The shaking started weeks later, waking me at 2 a.m., my body reliving the blast, the gunfire, the moment I thought I'd lost everything. I saw the therapist, said what I could without breaking clearance, but it didn't touch the core of it. The core was what I'd become to survive. Someone who could make the call, take the shot, crawl through the dirt with blood in her eyes. Someone who left a piece of herself in that unnamed place, with the screams and the heat and the failure. That's the story I've never told. Not to Mom, who'd cry for the girl she didn't know was bleeding. Not to Dad, who'd see the failure before the survival. Not to Logan, who'd want to understand but couldn't. But now, after the ceremony, after the truth broke free, I'm ready to let it out. To let that piece of me breathe, maybe even heal. Because I'm not just Colonel Celeste Morgan. I'm the woman who survived that night. And I'm still here telling you this, so you know you can survive your own darkness too. So tell me, have you ever carried a moment so heavy it changed who you are? A night, a choice, a loss that still wakes you up. Heart racing? Share it in the comments. I read every one. And if this story hit you, if it reminded you that even the darkest nights don't define you, hit that like button, share with your crew, and subscribe to Hidden Family Revenge Stories. Because the best revenge isn't just surviving, it's owning your truth and shining anyway. The next chapter's waiting. Maybe it's yours.